What are you? More specifically, who are you? To answer this question, someone will need to have a degree of understanding of their own identity and what shapes it. But how do you build an identity? The way humans have been doing it for millennia isn't really complicated. Be born, observe those around you and the environment you were placed in, and absorb all of it like the amazing little sponge that you are. Of course, some aspects you cannot pick and choose, like the color of your eyes or the place you were born in. Some things, however, you are in control of. You can learn mannerisms from your mom and funny jokes from your dad. Your teacher will introduce you to your favorite subject, and your friends will show you music you enjoy. You'll learn that you don't want to be loud like Uncle Bob, and you enjoy specific activities maybe your siblings don't. The construction of your identity was limited to what you were capable of perceiving in your immediate context. Like a child playing with blocks, you build yourself with bits of likes, dislikes, dreams, fears, and a million intricacies of your being. Eventually, we all end up with that uniquely designed creation we call I. Once technology was thrown into the mix, this process began to change significantly. We've always had stories and tales passed down through generations that somehow influenced the beliefs and perspectives of cultures and social circles close to one another. With the invention of cinema in 1895, however, anyone in the world who got their hands on a movie could now dream of being as brave as the cowboys in the Wild West, decide to dress like Audrey Hepburn, or want to fight as well as Bruce Lee or Rocky. As Karen Cirillo puts it in one of her articles, new communication technologies have freed interaction from the requirements of physical co-presence. This becomes increasingly relevant with the introduction of social media. With the world at your fingertips, you are no longer a passive agent interacting with a piece of media, like a movie or a story, with no ability to affect what goes on in it. Now, you have the capability to actively interact with millions of other people who happen to have the same capability as you do. Not only that, but humans have become really good at creating spaces to express themselves and their thoughts in different online environments. Like, very, very good. Video games also seem to have a big impact on how our way of shaping our identity works. Specifically those games featuring custom character creation and online multiplayer gaming options. Humans learn to build their perception of the world based on what they see and how they see it. People like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who were born in the beginning or right amid the digital era, can attribute a big part of how their world perception is formed to video games, social media, and other types of digital format information. We've grown up with games like The Sims 4, Skyrim, Fallout 4, Final Fantasy, Fortnite, Cyberpunk 2077, Baldur's Gate, Ark, Animal Crossing, and many more that show us that a character, a person, an identity, can be created by sliding some buttons and clicking some sliders, choosing personality traits, and selecting the outfits we find the coolest or most fitting for who we are creating. We're able to change most aspects of them at will, and most times the possibilities of whom our characters can become are ample, and each one of them is interesting in its own way. This introduces a dynamic where individuals learn that constructing a character, an identity, is a matter of sliders, buttons, and personal choices. If we are shown this way of character building from games early on in our childhood, these are bound to become building blocks we use to create the uniquely designed creation we call I. Social media is kind enough to lend us a hand and make this connection between our video games and real-life character and identity creation even easier with the introduction of fun face filters in apps like Instagram, TikTok, or Snapchat, or apps centered only on editing features of our own body or face, like Facetune, Airbrush, and MeToo. With tools like these, we really aren't any different from the avatars we see on our screens when it comes to how we can alter and curate how we want our digital persona to come across. And in the end, in a world where digitalization is consuming more and more of our lives, it ends up becoming a big part of our overall personas or identities. Of course, the way you look and present your physical self isn't determined by your facial body features alone. Here is where we introduce aesthetics. The Oxford Dictionary defines aesthetics as the philosophy of the beautiful or of art, or a system of principles for the appreciation of the beautiful. Time magazine describes how the suffix core is used as a modifier to describe a type of aesthetic and describes aesthetics as used in social media as a catch-all term for Gen Z, encompassing moods, feelings, and subcultures around which people can find like-minded users online. According to this webpage, there are more than 450 different types of course to choose from when selecting an aesthetic for yourself. Some of these types, like Tomato Girl, Coaster Girl, Stealth Wealth, Balletcore, and many more, can be seen on the screen. Before modern social media and this latter identity construction perspective video games have given us changed the way we conceive identity building. People rely more on friends, local niche groups, and personal ways of expression, in other words, local knowledge, to collect building blocks to construct their identity. When considering non-local sources of media at the time, like TV, newspapers, or magazines, the information transmitted was vertical, or from one source to many others. Thus, if the movie you went to see in the cinema showcased the aesthetics of Marilyn Monroe or James Dean, suddenly that would become the aspiring style for many, even when maybe if another option were shown instead of Marilyn or James, the latter would be a more enticing block to add to our identity instead of the one actually being shown. This, combined with the desire to be accepted by our peers closest to us and the resources we had in our immediate environment, helped shape how we express ourselves physically. Large amounts of people being exposed to similar kinds of media, information, and knowledge leads to the consolidation of collective identity and the shared sense of belonging to a group. Before interactive social media, your identity was influenced predominantly by the collective identity of the community you were surrounded by. With social media being the ultimate non-local source of knowledge, people are now exposed to everyone, everywhere, at all times. Ideas and beliefs are thrown into the virtual void to be shared, observed, criticized, adopted, and modified a million times over faster than it took to take the train to the next town. Social media gave many people the opportunity to become a part of communities they would otherwise have no chance of belonging in. The probability of finding like-minded people with increasingly specific interests is now more likely than ever. And so, the niches diversify and multiply until you are left with hyper-specific groups with hyper-specific beliefs, styles, and principles. People feel very strongly about the building blocks that make up their identity, so naturally, many people will defend their niches and aesthetics fervently and identify with them in very intimate ways. Aesthetics are more than just the way you dress. There are parameters and principles inherent to the creation of course that make some of these aesthetics a lifestyle. You have Pinterest boards, TikTok videos, Instagram pages, forums, streaming fan bases, and other platforms that are based on showing how specific aesthetics are to be correctly displayed and appropriately performed. Various influencers, celebrities, and online trends show us day and night what things belong in certain aesthetics and how to transform ourselves into the purest version of each of these. Slowly but surely, if we identify ourselves with a certain aesthetic strongly enough, we will put it as a cornerstone for the building of our identity. The music we listen to, the clothes we wear, the type of makeup we apply, the words we use, the way we speak, the way we move. It all becomes a performance of the aesthetic we've adopted. Just like a video game, we spend time sliding buttons and clicking sliders to pick just the perfect mix of attributes for the aesthetic that resonates with us. We create an avatar of ourselves. This, of course, isn't inherently wrong. Everyone takes inspiration from things they like and find interesting to base some sort of their essence on. The issue, in my opinion, arises when our chosen aesthetic becomes a prison rather than a source of inspiration. Apparel stores were quick to catch on and began mass-producing items that cater to specific popular aesthetics and specialize their clothes more and more every time to fit that specific niche. Once you're deep enough, there seems to be a pressure to not get out, to not change aesthetics. You have clicked save on your editing file and there are no more customization checkpoints for a good while now. The more eyes you have on you, specifically digitally, the more pressure you have to stay in the aesthetic you have conscribed yourself to. Additionally, chances are that if you were a teenager up until the mid-2010s, you remember going through an awkward phase and now are oddly noticing that teenagers nowadays seem to simply know what to do with themselves and appear to skip that awkwardness altogether. 13, 14, and 15-year-olds dancing perfectly synchronized to catchy TikTok songs with their perfectly picked outfits and impressively well-done makeup seem older than they really are and appear to even behave like girls with more life behind them. The same case happens with the boys. The implications of tweens and teens skipping the awkward phase are very easy to see and a topic for another video. Or, if you can't be bothered to wait, this video by Shakespeare does a great job talking about this issue. My take on one of the reasons why this happens is because before the mid-2010s, aesthetic culture and social media weren't nearly at the height that they are now. There were barely any tutorials on how to be a specific type of person unless you were trying to be goth, glam, or a tomboy girl. Apparel stores didn't cater for hyper-specific styles and niches weren't as specialized and mainstream as they are now. All it takes nowadays is to look up tutorials on how to look exactly the way you dream of, and a plethora of videos, tutorials, parasocial relationships between influencers, and companies ready to bleed your wallet dry are ready to help you become your best authentic self at the low price of sacrificing your individuality. Suddenly, belonging online became just as, or if not more important, than belonging in real life. Dress, think, and act in a certain aesthetic-like way, and the rest of the niche will approve of you. Likes, comments, and followers as a virtual reward and reinforcement that this part of your identity is something good that must be preserved kicks in, not taking into account the ever-changing nature of the internet and how hyper-ephemeral trends are. Before you know it, there's a chance the aesthetic you've worked so hard to adopt into your identity has drastically changed or has now fallen off into oblivion in exchange for the next new aesthetic or core. What happens when you outgrow an aesthetic, but you don't know who you are without that identity building block anymore? Some trends and aesthetics in social media that classify you into a type of genre or human, depending on specific characteristics of your being, are also quite popular, and many people also use them as building blocks to further define themselves and their identity. Seeing as a lot of these classifications are extremely subjective and arbitrary, these types of attempts to define and classify a person can lead to feelings of anxiety, body dysmorphia, and other affections in mental health. Needless to say, this can all take a toll on the psychological environment of a person whose brain is still in development. Now, with the development of technology such as virtual and augmented reality and artificial intelligence, transhumanism is knocking right at our door. This, in turn, makes reality feel ever so malleable and, in a way, hyper-realistic, or, as defined by sociologist Jean Baudrillard, the inability to distinguish reality and representations of it. Among the feeling that the digital and physical worlds are meshing, and theories like the world we live in is a simulation, and the feeling of existential dread that the world is slowly dying and living a good quality life is getting harder by the day, we tend to detach ourselves from reality and gamify our lives as much as possible as a way to cope. As usual, clothing is one of the first aspects that tend to change when our worldview also does. No wonder we seem to be dressing like cartoon characters more and more every day. An example of this can be the mischief big red boots, Prada's cartoonishly puffy purses, Levi's 8-bit hoodies and Polly Pocket-esque attire, or the 2D style backpack. The cartoonification of fashion is also another topic on its own that, if you're interested, I could also make a video on. In this article by High Snobiety, it is said that as the boundaries between the metaverse and reality continue to blur, it's no surprise that fashion is beginning to offer cartoonified clothing, accessories, and footwear mimicking the appearance of digital renders. All that being said, I still do think there is a place for aesthetics and social media as a powerful tool to help people discover dimensions of their own self that they maybe wouldn't be able to grasp had they no access to the internet. In a world where the virtual and physical are intertwined and identities are gamified, it is just necessary to navigate it with consciousness, authenticity, and much care to remind ourselves that we are far more than just an aesthetic. We are in constant change, and therefore, we have the right and the privilege to be a little bit of everything we desire. After all, the true essence of who we are goes beyond the aesthetics we wear and the avatars we create. Thank you so much for listening to my video essay, and I hope that you could learn something new. If you like these kind of topics or really learning in general, I recommend subscribing to me because I will be posting more videos on many different topics that I think about. And if you are interested in any specific topic, then please do make sure to leave a comment so that I can look at it and maybe feature that topic in a video.